All right, so it begins. Now, remember just a few months ago during the midterms, I repeatedly warned you pretty much every night about what the Democrats' real but hidden agenda was. The agenda they were hiding before the election. They want to impeach the president. They want open borders, get rid of ICE. They want their crumbs back desperately, more regulations, and endless, nonstop investigations into all things Donald Trump and his administration. Now, every night as we go over the news, I want you to look at things from a different perspective. As we talk to these new newsmakers on the Democratic side, ask yourself very important questions because you're going to come to a conclusion pretty quickly, I think. Are those in power that we show you every night, ask yourself, is what they are doing good for this country? Do their comments, do their remarks, do their actions, do they strengthen the country? Will what they're doing, will it improve the lives of the American people, help the American people, advance our country's interests? Now, you can forget about a red state, blue state, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, left, right, doesn't matter. Is what you're seeing good for the United States of America and the American people? Because as we speak, there are some in this country so filled with anti-Trump rage every second, every minute, every hour of every day, that they're willing to say and to do anything to destroy the president, his family, delegitimize the 2016 election, even if America and we the people suffer as a result. Now, many months ago, I identified what I call the 5 forces that are actively working against the president. Obviously, it's Democrats. They hate him. Then you have, of course, the establishment media. They hate him. Never Trumpers. They want to be justified in, well, not being a part of electing somebody who has governed conservatively, establishment Republicans that are weak, and the deep state. And for almost 2 years, they have been totally obsessed, as we all know by now, Russia, with a few intermittent distractions like Stormy, whatever else. But on Friday, those 5 forces suffered a serious setback when the special counsel's memos on Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, indicated no evidence of any Trump, Russia collusion, zero. It's about taxi cab medallions, loan applications, taxes in general. Nothing about Russia or Trump. Now, the Destroy Trump forces were kind of distraught, so they sent themselves into their typical predictable convulsions. Then they settled on Plan B, their backup plan. Imaginary campaign finance violations against President Trump. That's what the Russia collusion was about. And in their sad and hate-filled world, Michael Cohen's guilty plea to making illegal campaign contributions will surely result in the end of President Trump once and for all, or so they say. Let's take a look at this manufactured but predictable hysteria.
This is a man who came in and said, I'm bigger than the House. I'm bigger than the intelligence community. I'm bigger than checks and balances. I'm bigger than the judicial community. I'm bigger than the free press. And he's going to pay for that the rest of his life.
When immigrants procure their citizenship by fraud, we strip them of their citizenship. When a president procures his presidency by fraud, should we consider doing the same?
I think the American people would support impeachment.
Donald Trump must be impeached.
He's got to know his future looks like it's behind bars.
Donald Trump is a criminal enterprise.
It certainly looks like they are the kind of offenses that would call for impeachment hearings.
You have this memorable phrase of individual number one. You know, it's going to go down, I think, in the history books, along with some of those memorable Watergate phrases.
He may be the first president in quite some time to face the real prospect of jail time.
When the evidence becomes so clear that you very likely have a criminal sitting in the Oval Office, what is the Congress left to do at that point?
These are the same people that have been saying the same lies for 2 years, and it is unfounded. According to Fox News legal analyst, our friend Greg Jarrett, if Michael Cohen's non-disclosure payment to Stormy Daniels or anybody else served a secondary purpose or a dual purpose, then it is not considered a campaign contribution and thus not illegal. In other words, if the payment benefited the Trump organization, the Trump brand name, even President Trump on a personal or family level, that's not against the law. It's as simple as that. And the president summed it up pretty perfectly on Twitter, writing, quote, there was no collusion, so now the Democrats go to a simple private transaction, wrongly call it a campaign contribution, which it was not, but even if it was, It is only a civil case like Obama's, but it was done correctly by a lawyer, and there would not even be a fine, lawyer's liability, if he made a mistake, not me. Cohn just trying to get his sentence reduced, witch hunt. Now remember, Cohn changed his story on this particular issue, and it's fascinating because the liberal media and the Democrats, they only want to pick the version that fits their desired political goal. They didn't believe him the first time. He even initially stated that the Daniels payment, for example, came out of his own pocket without the president's knowledge. And sadly, most of his alleged crimes do include lying and fraud. But the media wants to believe Cohn now. They don't like Michael Cohn. They've never liked Michael Cohn, and they're not his friend today. And meanwhile, the president has acted in accordance with the law, committed no criminal campaign finance violation, and he sure as hell never colluded with Russia, which is what this was supposed to be about. But then we have disgraced FBI Director James Comey. He's never let the presumption of innocence get in the way of his complete and total obsessive hatred for President Trump. Last night he called on Americans to oust President Trump with, quote, every breath we have. But he's not biased at all. Take a look.
All of us should use every breath we have to make sure that the lying stops on January 20th, 2021.
Oh, I guess he doesn't have a political agenda. The same guy that leaked information to get Robert Mueller appointed. Oh, that's the same Comey that might have espionage issues himself by releasing those documents, and the same guy that, well, may be in trouble himself with the law. I have some advice for Jim Comey. Don't throw stones from a glass house. It's December, but the year of the boomerang is not quite over. Now, late last week, Comey testified behind closed doors on Capitol Hill about the multitude of serious controversies surrounding his leadership at the FBI, including FISA abuse, his handling of the Clinton investigation. And for a man who claims to have such integrity, such a great memory, he seemed to have a really hard time answering questions or remembering anything that mattered. In fact, many of those in the room accused him of using his attorneys to run interference, while another 245 times he says he can't remember in one shape, manner, or form.
The Republicans came out and said that a government lawyer sort of ran interference and shut down specific lines of questioning. Did that happen? And if so, what topics were not discussed?
When you read the transcript, then I think you will not see that happening.
And he did admit, by the way, that the Steele dossier was never verified. You know, the bulk of the FISA application, we'll get to that in a second. So another lie from James Comey. Now, the transcript is out. It was happening over and over and over again, 250 times, according to Trey Gowdy. During his testimony, he answered, I don't recall 71 times. Get this. He stated, I don't know, an additional 166 times. One lawmaker reportedly said, quote, his memory was so bad I feared he might not remember how to get out of the room after the interview. Another claimed, quote, it was like he suddenly developed Alzheimer's after conveniently remembering enough facts to sell his book. Pretty awful. A lot of selective amnesia from someone who claims to be an innocent man. But even more troubling is this, is something Comey actually said during this hearing. According to this transcript from Friday, he admitted Hillary's bought and paid for dirty Russian dossier, the one that was used to commit a fraud 4 separate occasions on FISA courts, was never verified either before or after the FISA warrant application. Let me explain this. In other words, the FBI and the DOJ had zero idea if what they were using to get one of the hardest warrants to get, a FISA warrant, zero clue whether any of the evidence was credible, true, and corroborated, which by law and by protocol must happen as a matter of course. They spied on an American citizen, trampled on his Fourth Amendment constitutional rights, a Trump campaign associate, with information paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC that we now know is completely and totally unverified. But wait, didn't Rod Rosenstein or Sally Yates, who signed off, Rod signed off on the final FISA application, didn't he say that law enforcement, if they're going to sign a FISA warrant, didn't he say that that officer must swear that the information in the FISA request is true and accurate? And if he get it wrong, there are serious consequences. I know because, well, I have the tape.
There's a lot of talk about FISA applications, and many people that I see talking about it seem not to recognize what a FISA application. A FISA application is actually a warrant, just like a search warrant. In order to get a FISA search warrant, you need an affidavit signed by a career federal law enforcement officer who swears that the information in the affidavit is true and correct to the best of his knowledge and belief. And that's the way we operate. And if it's wrong, sometimes it is, if you find out there's anything incorrect in there, that person is going to face consequences.
Comey's going to face consequences. I'm just waiting to find out what they are. An American was spied on by your federal government. Think about this. With a warrant based on what was uncorroborated, unverified, opposition research, bought and paid for Russian lies by Hillary Clinton. And they never told the judge that Hillary paid for it, ever. Multiple judges were lied to. Multiple frauds were committed on the FISA court. When will we hear from the FISA judges? Because those would be crimes in all likelihood. Our own Greg Jarrett has identified 6 specific felonies that would be applicable on this case alone. Now, if the left really cared about civil liberties, they would be demanding an investigation. They would care about equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws, and our constitutional rights. But like with everything else to destroy Trump forces, they're willing to put all their hatred for the president above everything else. For them, it's always politics. That trumps, no pun intended, all. It's the very reason they tried to ruin Justice Kavanaugh's life without any due process, without any presumption of innocence, on a case that had happened 36 years prior. But at the same time, they barely yawned, said nothing over recent abuse allegations, physical, emotional, against Keith Ellison, their number 2 at the DNC. Many of these same people love Bill Clinton. None of them spoke out about Michael Avenatti. If you're a Democrat, you don't get the Kavanaugh treatment. It's the very reason why they obsess about Russia for years, but they ignore the Uranium One scandal, where Vladimir Putin had a network inside of this country, the foundational material of nuclear weapons, for crying out loud. 20% of America's foundational material for nuclear weapons. Putin's network in America, we have a spy in there that's chronicling bribery, kickbacks, money laundering, extortion. And he's telling the FBI, oh, then Robert Mueller. But the deal still went through. Hillary approved it. And guess what? Her foundation ended up, for people involved in that deal, $145 million given to the Clinton Foundation. And yeah, some of that uranium left the United States. Where's the outrage over that serious Russia scandal? Why would we ever allow Putin's thugs in America to get a hold of our uranium, and we don't even have enough uranium as a country? Where's that investigation? And in the case of Hillary's dirty dossier, okay, same year, 2016, Russian influence, her campaign funneled millions of dollars, through a law firm. I bet if Manafort or Michael Cohen did it, they'd be arrested. But anyway, then using an op research firm, hiring a foreign national who uses questionable spies from Russia, Christopher Steele, puts together research from his sources in Russia. The dossier is based on Russian lies paid for by Hillary, literally leaked to the American people to influence the 2016 election. I thought we were investigating Russian influence in the election. No investigation into bought and paid for lies to influence the American people. So you think about this when you turn on these other networks or pick up a newspaper. You know, you think about this if you listen to any Democrat across this country in their sanctimony, in their lectures, talk about campaign finance. There's no Trump-Russia collusion, but we have major mistakes. Let's see. Vladimir Putin. Tell Vladimir I'll have more flexibility after the election. Dmitry Medvedev. Or the Uranium One deal. Or what we were just talking about, and that relates to the dossier.